The dying station. The orbital station Meridian 7 was dying, and everyone knew it. Not from structural failure or system collapse, those problems could be fixed. No, Meridian 7 was dying because its children had stopped drinking. The station housed over 15,000 Vorlani, a species of crystalline beings whose bodies shimmered with internal light. Beautiful, ancient, and proud, the Vorlani had built Meridian 7 as a trade hub connecting 12 star systems. For 3 generations it had thrived. Then the children started refusing water. It began with 1 child, then 5, then 20. Within 6 months, nearly every Vorlani child under the age of 10 had stopped drinking completely. Their internal light grew dim. Their crystalline skin became cloudy and cracked. And despite every medical intervention, they were fading. Dr. Cashin stood in the medical bay, staring at the monitors displaying vital signs of 32 children. Each readout showed the same terrifying pattern: severe dehydration, cellular degradation, complete rejection of all liquids. "Try the protein solution again," she ordered, her voice tight with frustration. A nurse carefully approached one of the children, a small girl named Tiva whose once brilliant purple glow had faded to a dull gray. The nurse held out a carefully prepared nutrient solution in a crystal cup. Tiva turned her head away. "Please, little one," the nurse whispered. "You must drink." Tiva's small voice was barely audible. "I can't." The puzzle no one could solve. Dr. Cashin had dedicated 3 years to understanding what she called crystalline rejection syndrome. She had consulted with medical experts from dozens of worlds. She had tested every variable: water purity, mineral content, temperature, delivery method, psychological factors. Nothing worked. The council had approved funding for experimental treatments. They had built specialized medical facilities. They had even brought in telepaths to try reaching the children on a mental level. The children still refused to drink. And without hydration, the Vorlani could not survive. Their crystalline bodies required constant fluid circulation to maintain cellular integrity. Dehydration for them was not like dehydration for carbon-based life forms. It was a cascade failure that ended in the body literally crumbling to dust. Dr. Cashin rubbed her tired eyes. She had not slept properly in weeks. None of the medical staff had. "Doctor," a voice called from the doorway. She turned to see Counselor Vren, a tall Vorlani whose body still glowed with the healthy amber light of middle age. His expression was grave. "The council is demanding an update," he said quietly. 3 more children were admitted this morning. The parents are losing faith. "Tell the council I am doing everything I can," Dr. Cashin replied, hearing the edge in her own voice. "That is what you told them last month. And it is still true." Vren stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Cashin, they are talking about evacuation. About sending the children to other stations, other worlds, hoping different environments might help." "We have already tried that," Dr. Cashin said. "The children who were transferred to Station Azure showed the same symptoms within days." "Then what do you suggest?" Dr. Cashin had no answer. The human no one noticed. Marcus Webb had been working on Meridian 7 for 8 months. He was a human mechanic employed by the station's maintenance division, one of 47 humans among 15,000 Vorlani. Most Vorlani barely noticed humans. They were not hostile, just indifferent. Humans were useful for technical work, reliable with machinery, and easy to ignore otherwise. Marcus was fine with that. He kept his head down, did his job, and sent most of his paycheck back to Earth where his mother was battling medical bills that never seemed to end. He worked in the lower engineering decks, maintaining the water filtration systems that kept the station's massive reservoirs clean. It was lonely work, but Marcus had always preferred machines to people. Machines made sense. They had problems with clear solutions. On the morning everything changed, Marcus was performing routine maintenance on Filter Array 7 when he heard crying. He stopped, wrench in hand, listening. The sound came again, a soft, broken sobbing that seemed to echo through the service corridor. Marcus followed the sound until he found a small Vorlani child sitting alone in an alcove near the filtration access port. She was tiny, her crystalline body barely the size of a human toddler, and her internal light flickered weakly like a dying candle. Marcus recognized her immediately. Tiva. He had seen her in the medical bay once when he'd been called to fix a broken monitor. She had looked sick then. Now she looked like she might shatter at any moment. "Hey," Marcus said softly, kneeling down a few feet away. "You okay?" Tiva looked up at him with eyes like cloudy quartz. She shook her head. "You shouldn't be down here," Marcus continued gently. "The medical staff is probably looking for you." "I don't want to go back," Tiva whispered. "They keep trying to make me drink things that taste wrong." Marcus sat down cross-legged on the floor. "Wrong how?" "They say it's water, but it's not." "Not really. It feels empty." Marcus frowned. He had heard about the children refusing to drink, but he had assumed it was some kind of medical condition. He had never thought to ask what the water tasted like to them. "What does real water taste like?" he asked. Tiva's dim glow flickered a little brighter. "It tastes like home. Like the deep pools where we used to swim before we came here. It tastes like memory." Marcus thought about that. He pulled his personal water bottle from his belt, a battered metal container he had carried for years. It was filled with water from the station's human quarters, not the specialized Vorlani reservoirs. "Want to try some of mine?" he offered. Tiva stared at the bottle. "Humans drink different water?" "Yeah. Our biology is different. We can't handle the mineral concentrations you guys need, so we have our own filtration system." Slowly, carefully, Tiva reached out and took the bottle. She brought it to her lips and took the smallest sip. Her body suddenly blazed with light, not the dim gray flicker she had shown before, but a brilliant purple glow that lit up the entire corridor. Marcus nearly fell backward in surprise. Tiva took another sip, then another. She drank half the bottle before finally stopping, her eyes wide with wonder. "It tastes like the deep pools," she whispered. "It tastes like home." Before Marcus could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Dr. Cashin appeared, followed by 2 nurses and Counselor Vren. They all stopped in shock at the sight of Tiva glowing brightly, holding a human water bottle. "What did you do?" Dr. Cashin demanded, rushing forward. Marcus stood slowly, hands raised. I offered her my water." Dr. Cashin stared at him, then at Tiva, then at the bottle. "Your water? From the human filtration system?" "Yeah." The doctor's expression shifted from alarm to confusion to something that might have been hope. She turned to the nurses. "Get me a sample of the human water supply immediately. I want a full chemical analysis." Vren stepped forward, his amber glow intensifying. "Human," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "you will explain exactly what is in that bottle." Marcus shrugged. "Just water. Same as everyone drinks." "Well, same as humans drink." But as Dr. Cashin took the bottle and saw how brightly Tiva was glowing, she realized that maybe, just maybe, the answer they had been searching for had been there all along. They had just been looking in the wrong place. Part 2, What Water Remembers. The Discovery. Dr. Cashin's laboratory became a storm of activity within hours. The moment the chemical analysis of Marcus's water came back, everything changed. "It cannot be this simple," Vren said, staring at the holographic readout floating above the examination table. "It cannot possibly be this simple." But it was. The Vorlani water, carefully filtered, perfectly mineralized, scientifically optimized, was missing something crucial. Something so basic that no one had thought to test for it. Organic matter. Not contamination. Not impurities. But the microscopic traces of life that existed in natural water sources, bacteria, algae, minerals that carried the chemical signature of living ecosystems. The Vorlani filtration systems had been too efficient. In their quest for perfect purity, They had created water that was chemically perfect but biologically dead. Human water, by contrast, was filtered to remove pathogens but still contained traces of organic compounds. It was Messier by Borlani standards. But to the children, whose bodies had evolved in the living pools of their home world, it tasted right. It tasted like home. How did we miss this? Dr. Cashin asked, her voice hollow with disbelief. Marcus, who had been standing awkwardly in the corner while scientists rushed around him, finally spoke up. Maybe you were looking too hard. Everyone turned to stare at him. He shrugged. You're all brilliant people. You were analyzing molecular structures and biological processes and complex medical theories. But sometimes the problem is not complicated. Sometimes kids just want something that feels familiar. The test. Within 48 hours, every affected child on Meridian 7 was offered water from the human filtration system. The results were immediate and undeniable. Children who had refused to drink for months accepted the water without hesitation. Their internal lights brightened. Their crystalline skin began to heal. Their vital signs stabilized. By the end of the week, not a single child remained in critical condition. The medical bay, which had been filled with the desperate glow of dying children, now hummed with healthy light and the sound of laughter. Dr. Cashin found Marcus in the engineering section 3 days after the breakthrough, still performing his regular maintenance duties. You should not be working down here, she said. Marcus looked up from the pump he was repairing. It's my job. Your job, Dr. Cashin said firmly, is now senior consultant to the station's medical division. The council approved it this morning. Salary tripled, full research privileges, and your own laboratory if you want it. Marcus set down his wrench. I'm not a scientist. No, Dr. Cashin agreed. You are something more valuable. You are someone who sees what we do not. She sat down beside him on the metal grating. Do you know why we missed it, Marcus? Why dozens of brilliant minds failed to solve a problem that you solved with a water bottle? Marcus shook his head. Because we forgot to be simple, Dr. Cashin said. We forgot that sometimes the most sophisticated solution is not the correct one. We forgot that life is messy and complicated and full of things that cannot be measured in laboratories. She looked at him. You remembered. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, my mom used to tell me that when I was little, I wouldn't eat anything except her homemade bread. Not because other food wasn't nutritious. Not because I was allergic to anything. But because her bread tasted like safety. Like love. Like home. He smiled slightly. I guess Tiva and the other kids were the same way. They didn't need perfect water. They needed water that felt like it came from somewhere that cared about them. Dr. Cashin felt something tighten in her chest. We were so focused on saving them that we forgot to simply be with them. Yeah, Marcus said. That happens a lot. The return home. 6 months later, Meridian 7 had been transformed. The water filtration systems were redesigned to include biological components, carefully managed ecosystems that added organic complexity to the water without compromising safety. The medical bay was converted into a family center where Vorlani elders taught children about their homeworld's pools and traditions. And every reservoir on the station now carried a small plaque with a simple message, in memory of what water remembers. Marcus never took the laboratory position. He stayed in engineering, maintaining the systems that kept the water flowing. But he visited the children regularly, and they always brightened when they saw him. Tiva, now healthy and glowing with vibrant purple light, became his shadow. She followed him through the corridors, asking questions about machinery and Earth and what it was like to live so far from home. Do you miss your planet? She asked him one day. Marcus thought about his mother, about the blue skies he hadn't seen in 2 years, about grass and rain and all the messy, complicated beauty of Earth. Yeah, he admitted. Every day. But you stayed here, Tiva said. To help us. Marcus smiled. Someone had to share their water. The council offered Marcus a permanent position on Meridian 7 with citizenship status and privileges reserved for Vorlani families. He accepted, sending enough money back to Earth to finally clear his mother's medical debt. And on the day the last child was declared fully healthy, Councillor Vren held a ceremony in the station's Great Hall. "We built this station with the best technology our civilization could create," Vren announced to the gathered crowd. "We believed that perfection was achieved through precision, through control, through the elimination of all uncertainty." He looked at Marcus. "But a human mechanic taught us that life is not perfection. Life is messy. Life is memory. Life is connection." He raised a crystal cup filled with water. To Marcus Webb, who reminded us that sometimes the answer we seek is not in our laboratories or our councils or our expertise. Sometimes it is in the simple act of sharing what we have with those who need it. The entire hall erupted in light as thousands of Vorlani glowed in unison, a tribute of luminescence that made Marcus's eyes sting. Later, when the ceremony was over and the crowds had dispersed, Marcus stood alone on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Tiva found him there. "Marcus," she said quietly. He turned. "Hey, kiddo." "Thank you," she said. "For the water. For staying. For everything." Marcus knelt down so they were eye level. "You know what I learned from you guys?" Tiva shook her head. "That home is not a place," Marcus said. "It is a feeling. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is help someone else feel at home, even when we are far from our own." Tiva's glow intensified. Then she did something no Vorlani had ever done before. She hugged him. Her crystalline body was cool against his skin, and her light was so bright he had to close his eyes. But he hugged her back, and in that moment, Marcus understood something profound. He had come to Meridian 7 looking for a job. He had found a purpose. And in the end, that made all the difference. The end. In a universe that worships complexity, one human proved that the most powerful solutions are often the simplest: compassion, presence, and the willingness to share what we have with those who need it most. Create captivating, never-ending stories that challenge imagination and explore endless possibilities. Generate stories on any idea or topic. Continue the narrative by selecting end quote, continue end quote, or typing end quote, yes end quote. Inspire creativity with an endless storytelling experience that few past did. Full HFY science fiction stories. Create a full story with 2 parts and every part should be 1,200 words please. This is the story for your inspiration. Please read this in new and perfect and please not match the same. Create the new one. And this is my YouTube channel name, HFY Codex Archives, 9:09 p.m. The alien warlord's daughter refused to speak, until a human cook sang her a lullaby. Part 1, The Silent Fortress. The Castle of Silence. The fortress of Warlord Kavith stood like a black mountain against the red sky of Draken Prime. Its walls were carved from volcanic stone, its towers sharp as blades. For 300 years, the Kavith bloodline had ruled the northern territories through strength and fear. Inside those walls lived a child who had not spoken in 2 years. Her name was Sarah, and she was 7 years old. She had silver skin like Aldraconi, pointed ears that could hear a whisper from 3 rooms away, and eyes the color of midnight. She was the warlord's only daughter, his heir, the future of his legacy. And she was completely, utterly silent. The warlord had tried everything. He brought physicians from 12 different star systems. He hired telepaths to scan her mind. He offered rewards to anyone who could make her speak. He even threatened her tutors, her guards, and her servants, thinking fear might unlock whatever had sealed her voice. Nothing worked. Sarah moved through the fortress like a ghost. She attended her lessons without complaint. She ate her meals without protest. She practiced combat forms with perfect precision. But she never spoke. Not one word. Not even a whisper. The warlord told himself it did not matter. Actions spoke louder than words. His daughter would be a warrior, not a diplomat. She did not need words when she had strength. But late at night, when the fortress was quiet, Cavith would stand outside his daughter's door and listen to the silence. And something in his chest would ache in a way no battle wound ever had. The human who arrived. Marcus Chen was not supposed to be on Draken Prime at all. He was a cook on a human cargo freighter that had suffered engine failure near Draconi space. The ship made an emergency landing on Draken Prime, and while the repairs were being completed, the crew needed temporary work to pay for parts. Marcus was 43 years old, stocky and strong, with graying hair and burned scars on his forearms from years of working over hot stoves. He had cooked in restaurants on 5 different planets. He knew how to work fast, stay quiet, and keep his head down. When the fortress put out a call for temporary kitchen staff, Marcus took the job. The pay was decent, and the work was familiar. He did not ask questions. He did not make trouble. He just cooked. The fortress kitchen was a massive stone chamber with 6 cooking fires, hanging pots the size of bathtubs, and a staff of 12 Draconi who barely acknowledged his presence. Humans were rare on Draken Prime. Most Draconi considered them soft, weak, and beneath notice. Marcus was fine with that. He had learned long ago that being invisible was sometimes the safest way to survive. He worked the early morning shift, preparing breakfast for the fortress garrison. Bread, roasted meat, protein porridge, the kind of heavy fuel that soldiers needed. It was simple work, but Marcus took pride in it. Good food mattered. It was one of the few things that connected every species in the galaxy. On his 4th day at the fortress, everything changed. The girl in the kitchen. Marcus was alone in the kitchen before dawn, kneading dough for the morning bread, when he heard a small sound behind him. He turned and saw a child standing in the doorway. She was tiny, silver-skinned, wearing a simple nightgown that pulled around her bare feet. Her dark eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that made him pause. Marcus wiped his flour-covered hands on his apron. "Hey there," he said gently. "You lost?" The child did not respond. She just stared. Marcus glanced around the empty kitchen. It was barely dawn. No one else would arrive for another hour. "You hungry?" he asked. The girl did not nod, but she did not leave either. Marcus pulled a stool up to the counter and gestured for her to sit. She hesitated, then climbed onto the stool with careful movements. He cut a small piece of warm bread from the batch he had finished earlier and placed it on a plate in front of her. Then he added a small dish of honey. The girl looked at the bread, then at him. "It's okay," Marcus said. "Go ahead." Slowly, she picked up the bread. She dipped it in the honey and took a small bite. Her eyes widened slightly. Marcus smiled. "Good, right? That's earth honey. I brought it with me. Can't make decent bread without good honey." The girl took another bite, then another. She ate the entire piece in silence. Marcus went back to his dough, working quietly. He did not ask her name. He did not ask why she was there. He just let her sit. When she finished eating, she climbed down from the stool. Marcus thought she would leave, but instead, she moved closer to where he was working. She watched him knead the dough with focused attention, her head tilted slightly. "You want to try?" Marcus asked. The girl blinked. Marcus tore off a small piece of dough and placed it on the counter in front of her. "Go ahead. Push it down, fold it over, push again. Like this." He demonstrated slowly. The girl watched, then placed her small silver hands on the dough and copied his movements. "That's it," Marcus said. "You're a natural." They worked together in comfortable silence until the first rays of sunlight began filtering through the high windows. Then, without a word, the girl turned and left. Marcus watched her go, then looked down at the small piece of dough she had been working. It was shaped almost perfectly. The warlord's discovery. That evening, Warlord Cavith was reviewing military reports in his study when his head of household guard, Commander Thane, entered. "My lord," Thane said, bowing. "There is something you should know." Cavith looked up. What is it? Lady Sarah was seen in the kitchens this morning. Cavith's jaw tightened. The kitchens? Why? We do not know, my lord. She was with one of the temporary staff. A human cook. Cavith stood slowly. A human? Yes, my lord. He was hired last week. His name is Marcus Chin. He has worked in restaurants across multiple systems. His background check was clean. And what was my daughter doing with this human? Eating bread, my lord. And, helping him cook. Cavith stared at his guard. Helping him cook? Yes, my lord. For a long moment, Cavith said nothing. Then he walked to the window and looked out over his fortress. His daughter, who had not spoken in 2 years. His daughter, who showed no emotion, no interest, no joy in anything. His daughter had gone to the kitchens to eat bread with a human stranger. Do not interfere, Cavith said quietly. My lord? I said do not interfere. If Sarah returns to the kitchens, let her. But watch. Report everything to me. Thane bowed. As you command. After the guard left, Cavith stood alone in his study. He thought about the physicians, the telepaths, the specialists who had all failed to reach his daughter. And he thought about a human cook who had given her bread and honey. Something stirred in his chest. Not hope, not yet. But something close. The return. Sarah returned to the kitchen the next morning at the same time. Marcus was mixing batter for breakfast cakes when she appeared in the doorway, silent as always. Morning, Marcus said, as if her presence was the most natural thing in the world. Want to help? Sarah climbed onto the stool. Marcus handed her a wooden spoon and a bowl of batter. Stir this. Keep it smooth, no lumps. Sarah took the spoon and began stirring with careful precision. They worked side by side as the fortress slowly woke around them. Marcus did not try to make her talk. He did not ask questions. He just worked, and let her work beside him. When the breakfast cakes were done, he gave her one with honey. She ate it slowly, her dark eyes watching everything he did. This became their routine. Every morning before dawn, Sarah would appear in the kitchen. Every morning, Marcus would give her something to do. Kneading dough. Stirring batter. Chopping vegetables with a child-safe knife. Measuring spices. He taught her in silence. She learned in silence. And slowly, something changed. The song that changed everything. 2 weeks after Sarah first appeared in his kitchen, Marcus was working late one evening, preparing dough for the next morning. He thought he was alone. Then he heard the small sound of bare feet on stone. He turned and saw Sarah standing in the doorway, her nightgown dusty, her eyes red. She had been crying. Marcus set down his rolling pin immediately. Hey, he said gently. What's wrong? Sarah did not answer. She just stood there, trembling. Marcus knelt down slowly, bringing himself to her level. Did something happen? Did someone hurt you? She shook her head, but tears rolled down her silver cheeks. Marcus did not know what to do. He was not a parent. He had no children. He was just a cook. But he knew what fear looked like. He knew what grief looked like. And this child was drowning in both. Come here, he said softly, opening his arms. Sarah hesitated. Then she ran forward and collapsed against him, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Marcus held her carefully, one hand on her back, the other cradling her head. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe. I've got you. She clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. And without thinking, without planning, Marcus began to sing. It was an old earth lullaby his grandmother had sung to him when he was young. The melody was simple, the words gentle. A song about stars and sleep and safety. He sang quietly, his voice rough but warm, and as he sang, Sarah's trembling began to slow. Her breathing steadied. Her grip on his shirt loosened slightly. Marcus kept singing until the last note faded into silence. Then he just held her, rocking slightly, the way his grandmother had held him. And then Sarah spoke. Her voice was small, barely a whisper, but it was real. Again, she said. Please. Marcus's breath caught. He looked down at her in wonder. Again, he repeated. Sarah nodded against his chest. The song. Again. So Marcus sang it again. And again. And again, until Sarah finally fell asleep in his arms. When Commander Thane found them an hour later, he froze in the doorway. The human was sitting on the floor, his back against the counter, the warlord's daughter asleep in his lap. And on the human's face was the gentlest smile Thane had ever seen. The voice that returned. The warlord's choice. Commander Thane stood in the doorway for a long moment, unsure what to do. Wake the human? Report to the warlord immediately? Take Lady Sarah back to her chambers? Before he could decide, another presence filled the doorway behind him. Warlord Kaveth. The massive Draconi warrior moved with complete silence despite his size. His red eyes took in the scene, his daughter asleep in a human's arms, tear stains on her silver cheeks, and an expression of peace on her face that Kaveth had not seen in 2 years. Thane started to speak, but Kaveth raised one clawed hand, silencing him. The warlord stepped into the kitchen and knelt down beside the human. Marcus's eyes flew open. When he saw the warlord, his body went rigid with fear. He started to move, to wake Sarah, to apologize, but Kaveth stopped him with a gentle gesture that seemed impossible from someone so fearsome. She spoke, Kaveth said quietly. Thane reported it immediately. Marcus swallowed hard. Yes, my lord. Just one word. Again. She wanted me to sing again. And did you? Yes, my lord. Kaveth studied the human for a long moment. Then he looked down at his daughter, peaceful in sleep, and something in his expression cracked. In 2 years, Kaveth said, his voice rough, physicians, telepaths, specialists from a dozen worlds have tried to reach my daughter. They failed. You gave her bread and honey and sang her a song. And she spoke. Marcus did not know what to say. I'm sorry, my lord. I didn't mean to. Do not apologize, Kaveth interrupted. Tell me why. Why did you do this? Marcus looked down at Sarah. Because she was alone, he said simply. Because she looked like she needed someone to see her. Not as an heir or a lady or a warlord's daughter. Just as a kid who needed bread and kindness. Kaveth was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I am a warrior. I have conquered territories. I have won battles. I have ruled through strength for 30 years. But I do not know how to reach my own child. Marcus met the warlord's eyes. Maybe she doesn't need a warrior right now, my lord. Maybe she just needs a father. The words hung in the air between them. Kaveth closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was something raw and vulnerable there that no one had ever seen before. Will you help me? He asked. Marcus blinked. My lord? Will you help me learn to be what she needs? Marcus stared at the most powerful warlord in 3 sectors, asking a human cook for help. Yes, Marcus said. Of course. Kaveth nodded once. Then, with surprising gentleness, he lifted Sarah from Marcus's arms. She stirred slightly but did not wake. The warlord carried his daughter toward her chambers, and for the first time in years, he held her not like a future warrior, but like the child she was. The lessons begin. The next morning, Marcus found an official summons waiting in his quarters. Report to the warlord's private study at dawn. Alone. His hand shook as he read it. He had no idea what to expect. When he arrived at the study, Kaveth was waiting. The room was simpler than Marcus expected, no weapons on the walls, no battle trophies, just books and strategic maps and a single window overlooking the mountains. Sit, Cavith said. Marcus sat. Cavith paced for a moment, then spoke. I need you to tell me everything. What you did. What you said. How you reached her. Marcus took a breath. I didn't do anything special, my lord. I let her be near me. I didn't push. I didn't demand. I just gave her space to exist without expectations. Expectations, Cavith repeated. Explain. Everyone in this fortress looks at Sarah and sees the future warlord, Marcus said carefully. They see responsibility. Legacy. Power. But when I looked at her, I just saw a scared kid. So I treated her like one. Cavith stopped pacing. She is not merely a child. She is. She's 7 years old, Marcus interrupted gently. My lord, with respect, she can be both. She can be your heir and your daughter. But maybe right now, she needs to be a daughter first. Cavith was silent. When did she stop speaking? Marcus asked. Cavith's jaw tightened. 2 years ago. After her mother died. Understanding crashed over Marcus like a wave. Oh, he said quietly. I'm sorry. My mate was killed in a border raid, Cavith said, his voice hollow. I was away commanding troops. When I returned, Sarah had not spoken since the news reached her. I thought. He trailed off. I thought if I made her stronger, she would not feel the pain. But pain doesn't work that way, Marcus said. You can't make it disappear by being strong. You can only learn to carry it. And kids, they need help learning how to carry it. Cavith sank into his chair. For the first time, he looked not like a warlord, but like a father who was lost. I do not know how to help her carry it, he admitted. Then let's figure it out together, Marcus said. And so the lessons began. Not lessons in strategy or combat or diplomacy. Lessons in being present. In listening. In letting a child be a child. Marcus taught Cavith simple things. How to knead bread beside Sarah. How to ask what she wanted instead of telling her what she needed. How to sit in comfortable silence. How to sing. That last one took the longest. I am a warlord, Cavith growled after his 5th attempt at the lullaby. I do not sing. Your daughter needs you to, Marcus said firmly. So you'll learn. The fortress transforms. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened in the fortress. Sarah began speaking more. Not constantly, not in long conversations, but in small moments. Thank you when Marcus gave her bread. Good morning to her father. Yes when asked if she wanted to try something new. Each word was a victory. But more than that, she began showing emotion. She smiled sometimes. She laughed quietly when Marcus told a joke. She even cried once, openly, when she burned her finger on a hot pan. The fortress staff watched in amazement. The silent lady was becoming a real child before their eyes. And Warlord Cavith was changing too. He started taking meals with Sarah instead of in his study. He began reading to her before bed. He learned to cook simple dishes so they could prepare food together. He even, to everyone's shock, began singing. His voice was terrible, deep and rough and completely off-key. But Sarah loved it. Every night, he would sing the lullaby Marcus had taught him, and every night, Sarah would fall asleep to the sound of her father's voice. The warriors in the garrison did not know what to make of their changed leader. He was still fierce in battle, still brilliant in strategy. But there was something different now. Something softer around the edges. Commander Thane summed it up best, the warlord has remembered he is also a father. The day everything changed. 6 weeks after Sarah first spoke, Marcus was in the kitchen when she appeared at her usual time. But this morning was different. She was not alone. Cavith walked beside her, wearing a simple tunic instead of his armor. He looked uncomfortable but determined. Good morning, Marcus said, hiding his surprise. Good morning, Marcus, Sarah said clearly. Then she looked up at her father. Papa wants to learn to make the breakfast cakes. Marcus blinked. Papa? Kavitha's silver face actually flushed darker. She asked if she could call me that. I said yes. Marcus's throat tightened. Of course, my lord. I'd be honored to teach you. So they cooked together. All three of them. Kavith was terrible at it. He used too much force when mixing batter, nearly shattered a bowl, and burned the first batch of cakes completely. But Sarah laughed. A real, bright, joyful laugh. And Kavith smiled. A genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Marcus watched them, father and daughter, covered in flour and laughing together, and felt something profound settle in his chest. This was why he cooked. Not for money or survival or even pride. But for this, the simple magic of food bringing people together. The departure. 3 months after Marcus first arrived at the fortress, his ship was finally repaired. The captain sent word they would depart in 2 days. When Sarah heard the news, she went completely silent again. Marcus found her sitting alone in the kitchen, her eyes filled with tears. Hey, he said gently, sitting beside her. What's wrong? You're leaving, Sarah whispered. I have to, Marcus said. My ship is fixed. My crew is waiting. But. Sarah's voice broke. But you're my friend. Marcus pulled her into a hug. I'll always be your friend, Sarah. Distance doesn't change that. Then why can't you stay? Marcus did not have a good answer for that. That evening, Warlord Kavith summoned him to his study. My daughter is heartbroken, Kavith said without preamble. I know, my lord. I'm sorry. Kavith studied him for a long moment. What would it take for you to stay? Marcus stared. My lord? Name your price, Kavith said. I will pay whatever you ask. I will give you quarters in the fortress. I will ensure your ship is compensated for the loss of their crew member. Just stay. Marcus's heart twisted. My lord, I appreciate the offer, but. Please, Kavith said, and there was raw desperation in his voice. I am still learning to be the father she needs. And you know how to reach her in ways I am only beginning to understand. Please do not take that away from her. Not yet. Marcus thought about his ship. His crew. The life he had been living, moving from planet to planet, always temporary, never staying anywhere long enough to matter. And he thought about a 7-year-old girl who had learned to speak again because someone gave her bread and sang her songs. I'll need to talk to my captain, Marcus said slowly. But, yes. I'll stay. Kavitha's expression collapsed with relief. Thank you. 5 years later. The fortress of Warlord Kavith was no longer silent. It was filled with laughter and song and the smell of fresh bread baking every morning. Sarah was 12 now, tall and strong, training to be a warrior like her father. But she was also kind, compassionate, and unafraid to show her emotions. She spoke freely. She laughed often. She sang the old earth lullaby to the younger children in the fortress, teaching them the same comfort it had given her. And every morning, she cooked breakfast with Marcus and her father. Kavith had become a different kind of leader. Still fierce, still brilliant in strategy, but also known for his fairness, his wisdom, and his unexpected compassion. Other warlords came to him for advice not just on battle tactics, but on governance, justice, and even family matters. The change in him had changed the entire territory. Marcus had become an official member of the household, not as a servant but as an honored friend and advisor. He had taught dozens of people in the fortress how to cook. He had introduced new foods, new techniques, new ways of bringing people together over meals. He had found something he had been searching for his entire life without knowing it. He had found home. One morning, as they prepared bread together, Sarah looked at Marcus and said, "Thank you." For what? Marcus asked. For singing to me that night, Sarah said. For seeing me when I was invisible. Marcus smiled, his eyes glistening. You were never invisible, Sarah. You were just waiting for someone to really look. Kavith, kneading dough beside them, added quietly, you taught me to look. To really see. Not just my daughter, but myself. What I had become. What I needed to change. He looked at Marcus. You saved more than Sarah's voice that night. You saved us both. Marcus did not know what to say to that. So he simply returned to his dough, working alongside the two people who had become his family. And as the sun rose over Draken Prime, the fortress filled with warmth and light and the promise of bread baking in the ovens. In the end, it was not a great battle or a political alliance that changed the fortress. It was a simple song, sung by a human cook to a child who had forgotten how to speak. And sometimes, that is all it takes to change the world. The end.